It's a good time for us to update, as we have been doing here at Gallup.com, a number of our trends on race relations and race attitudes in America. Here are four of the more interesting ones and important trends that I think that you should know about. One, perhaps the most change that we've seen in any question relating to race relations comes down to a question that Gallup first asked in 1958, do you approve of marriages between blacks and whites? Back at that point, 4% of Americans, let me repeat that, 4% of Americans said they approved of marriages between blacks and whites in 58. Dwight Eisenhower was president. Fast forward to today, and look how that number has climbed and climbed and climbed all the way up to 87%. Now, it's not 100%, mind you, but 87% of Americans say they approve. That trend first crossed the 50% or the majority point in the mid-90s. Between 1994 and 1997, it went from 48% to 64%, and that's when a majority first said that they approved of black and white marriages. A huge change over time in that trend. Second, a question that we think has significant policy implications: does the U.S. need new laws to reduce discrimination against blacks? Of course, that was one of the big changes that occurred in the 60s and 70s, was the passage of civil rights laws in this country. Where do Americans stand now? Well, there's still a big race difference in reaction to this question. 53% of blacks say yes, new laws are needed to reduce discrimination against blacks in this country, but only 17% of whites agree with that sentiment at this point in time. Third question, another major difference between the attitudes of blacks and whites has to do with the criminal justice system. Do you think that the justice system in America is biased or not? We've trended that several times, but in our most recent asking, 68% of black Americans said yes. That contrasts with just 25% of whites who say yes, so a huge racial gulf there in views of the justice system. Finally, fourth question, very little difference. Are you satisfied with the way your personal life is going? Well, here we find that blacks, whites, and I should say Hispanics are all very similar. 89% of whites say they're satisfied with their personal life. 87% of blacks say they're satisfied, and 87% of Hispanics say they're satisfied as well. Blacks have picked up a little on this on a relative basis. There was a little larger margin on this personal satisfaction in some previous times we've asked this, but right now, that's one question where there is agreement in this country. Whites, blacks, and Hispanics, all about the same in terms of satisfaction with the way their lives are going. We've got a lot more on racial attitudes in this country today and attitudes about race here at Gallup.com that you'll want to look at very carefully at this important time in our U.S. history. I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.